everybody, and welcome to the semifinal match for the SCG Tour Atlanta Open. Top four, I'm Chris Van Meter. We got Andrew Boswell. Gerry Thompson is on green-white tokens, first seed, 15-0 in the Swiss. Tom Ross is on white-red humans, fifth seed. He went 12-3 in the Swiss. We're on the play. Gerry's just going to start out with the tapped land, and then follow that up with a fortified village and a Sylvan Advocate. Tom, however, had a town gossip monger on turn one. That has the potential to get pretty big here pretty quickly, but he does have to sink some mana into it to be able to attack it through his Sylvan Advocate.
Yeah, either way, this is still going kind of according to plan for Tom. He gets to get ahead on, or play a creature first onto the board, and Tom's one drop is going to be equal power, if not greater, than Gerry's two drop at this stage in the game. So certainly, even though Tom's on the draw, he's doing his best to essentially steal the initiative. That said, we talked about this before, if Gerry's able to pair this Sylvan Advocate with a Dromoka's Command, even getting the Sylvan Advocate up to a 3-4 is very formidable and would give Tom a lot of problems. So we'll see what Gerry can do here.
Well, on Tom's second turn, he has another Plains. He has a second Town Gossip Monger and an Anointer of Champions, so he's able to generate this real fast board presence with these three creatures. Gerry does, however, have a Dromoka's Command in his hand, so he might be able to shrink Tom's board and grow his creature here, and it looks like that's what he's going to do. Let's see what he decides to fight off.
One thing worth noting here on this board is the way that Tom's creatures are set up. All of these creatures profit quite a bit off of a turn 3 always watching. So I could certainly have seen a situation where Gerry decided to hold this Dromoka's Command in case that happened, but it looks like he just wants to fire it off while it's good to fire off.
All right, so Tom is actually going to transform that Gossip Monger in response. That way 2 damage goes onto the Sylvan Advocate, although it doesn't really matter because it gets a counter and he still gets to attack in for 3. Tom does not have a third land, but he does have a Dragon Hunter and an Expedition Envoy to deploy on the battlefield here. Just a couple of 1-mana 2/1s. Good old country Savannah Lions.
Yep.
Tom's board could definitely benefit from something like Thalia's Lieutenant or an Always Watching.
Yeah, that is certainly the play that Tom's hoping for. Gerry looks like he might be in a situation where he can cast a Gideon here, and if he can just get into a board stall with an active Planeswalker, that's going to put him in great shape. He has to worry a little bit about that Planeswalker getting sniped by a Griftspoon, but this is one of Gerry's best paths to buying himself time to win the late game.
Gerry's going to play his Gideon Ally of Zendikar. Looks like he's going to make a Night token and then pass the turn back to Tom. Tom did not transform his Town Gossip Monger into an Incited Rabble just because it has to attack, and he might not want to just yet.
Yeah. It looks like Tom has a Thalia's Lieutenant, so the implications of potentially playing that, if it is what he drew, everything will get a +1/+1 counter, and he can have everything attack this Gideon, potentially trading with the token, but definitely killing the Gideon at the cost of one of his own creatures.
And it looks like that might be what he does. He also has that Anointer of Champions, which will allow him to pump one of his 3/2s to be big enough to actually trade with that Sylvan Advocate.
Yeah, so this is a great attack because it puts Gerry in a position where Gerry is going to be able to eat one of Tom's creatures for free, potentially, if he wants to kill the Gideon. But Tom can also force some trades if he wants.
Yeah, well, if Gerry just blocks 1 and 1 here, Tom has the choice of eating the Night token but losing one of his creatures to the Advocate,
or just having everything trade.
Having everything trade, which isn't that bad of a perspective.
Yeah.
So it looks like everything is going to trade.
And just to highlight the functionality of this Anointer of Champions, this is when you first look at it, it's kind of a weak card, but it serves an important role in this white deck because this deck is so high on creatures. It wants an extremely dense threat base, and this Anointer of Champions gives him a little bit more interaction, a little bit more play. It's a pseudo spell, even though it is in fact a creature.
Gerry has another Sylvan Advocate and a Night token that he's going to reload here with. Looks like Tom is going to transform his Incited his Town Gossip Monger into an Incited Rabble here on Gerry's end step.
And this Incited Rabble's no joke. The fact that it's a 3/4 and it can potentially be pumped up to a 4/4 means that it can beat any of Gerry's creatures in combat, and if it ever gets to connect with that Gideon, it can just take it out.
This is all off of only 2 lands, by the way.
Yeah.
Tom's deck can operate on a very small resource pool.
And we can see that Gerry drew most of his, most of the bottom of his curve. 2 Sylvan Advocates, Dromoka's Command, Gideon. These are his early plays, and this is exactly what Gerry wants early in the game. So the fact that he's on the play and has had access to these cards makes me not surprised whatsoever to see him still at a 20 total life at this stage.
And here we have an Always Watching for Tom. This is going to be very timely. It's going to pump all of his creatures +1/+1 and give them vigilance. So now he can even attack with that Anointer of Champions and still use its ability.
Yeah, a great synergy with Always Watching.
Tom is very good at extracting as much value out of his creatures as he can in these, small, under-the-radar aggressive decks.
Yeah, the other thing that's great about what he does is he's played so many decks where combat math is a big thing, and he's able to just go through the permutation so much faster than a lot of his opponents. And so he gets to make decisions a lot more quickly than his opponents are able to. And so when you're playing against him, it puts you in this really awkward situation because you're used to being able to think about things while your opponent's thinking about things. But if Tom doesn't take time to think, you feel like the ball's on you to make a decision, and maybe you don't get a chance to think it all through.
So it looks like he's just going to send his creatures at Gideon. Gerry's going to let him go. He does have another Gideon in his hand, and if he has a 6th land, then he can make that Sylvan Advocate a 4/5. Oh, and he just picked up another copy of Dromoka's Command.
And so a notable thing about Dromoka's Command, the way the card read, it says sacrifice an enchantment as the first line of things that will happen. So Gerry can make Tom sacrifice an enchantment and then have Gerry fight something, and the enchantment will die. The creature will lose the +1/+1 from that Always Watching first before the fight actually happens.
Yeah, no matter the modes you choose, they do always happen in order on what's on the card.
Yeah, so this is a huge play. Not only is this a 2-for-1, but it's really going to take a lot of the power out of Tom's board.
So he's going to be able to make him sack an enchantment. And it looks like he's going to kill off that Anointer of Champions.
And I like that because Anointer of Champions is one of the cards that helps Tom attack. That Thau's Attendant, it's going to take a little while to grow to a reasonable size, but that Anointer of Champion can give multiple creatures the potential to attack and give Tom a lot of flexibility in combat.
Plus, even though Tom was stuck on 2 lands for a while, he played a lot of spells and doesn't have a lot of cards in his hand, so that champion or that lieutenant is going to take some time to grow, like you said. This 4/5 is going to do a real good job at holding off these creatures. If Tom doesn't have another land or some other way to pump that Incited Rabble, it is just going to die when it attacks into the 4/5 Sylvan Advocate.
Yeah, huge turn of events for Gerry, and the fact that Gerry's able to potentially take this game 1 bodes extremely well for him in these post-board games.
All right, well, Tom just has to attack with his Incited Rabble. It is a 3/4. It's going to run into a 4/5, and then he just has 3 1-drops. Going to get a couple clues. Going to grow Thalia's Lieutenant. An Oath of Nissa for Gerry is going to give him a look. Looks like he has a Nissa.
And he's going to have 2 Planeswalkers. Tom needs to draw a Griff's Boon and answer these Planeswalkers ASAP because things can get out of hand real fast.
He's going to go ahead and play that Nissa. We're just going to plus. He's going to plus the Nissa. We're going to make another Night token. Oh, we're going to get in there with that Gideon. Let's start pushing some damage here.
Got to win the game at some point. I've got post-board games to play.
Right? My deck gets better.
Yep. The other thing that's nice about this is Gerry probably wants an emblem, because if Tom were to draw an Always Watching, then those Thraben Inspectors would potentially be able to push through the Knights that he has access to. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Gerry make an emblem on his turn, and this attack was mainly a way to allow an emblem to happen without losing that Gideon.
Yeah, Emblem Nissa minus seems like to be in a real good spot there. Just an army of 4/4s is going to be bigger than anything Tom can cobble together.
Yeah. There might even be the point where Gerry starts getting aggressive. Gerry's at 20 and Tom's only at 12. So if Gerry just made an emblem minus his Nissa attacked with the team, Tom would be in a pretty bad situation.
Well, Console's Lieutenant is going to come down and grow Thalia's Lieutenant up to a 5/5, and now it's going to attack.
Have to imagine the most likely thing to happen here is that Gerry decides to chump block with the plant, but if he has a Jermoka's command in hand, it might be a good opportunity to fire it off.
I think he's hellbent.
He is hellbent? Okay.
That's what it looks like. And Todd Stevens is up a game over Michael Siegel.
Wow, go Todd.
So he's going to double block that Thalia's Lieutenant.
Going for the trade.
Going to take it out. This seems fine to me. Just get the largest creature off of Tom's board. We're going to be able to just generate 1,000,000 creatures here and make them giant.
With that Thalia's Lieutenant not on blocking duty, Gerry could have put so much pressure on Tom. But he seems content to just play things a little more slowly, and both avenues are going to be great avenues for victory.
Gideon plus is going to happen. Hanger Backwalker for 3 is going to happen. Nissa minus is going to happen. And we're going to have a lot of damage coming through here. This is going to be 12 points of damage. Tom Ross does have to chump block something here. Otherwise, he is dead.
And Gerry, not only does he have an offense, he has a defense. Not only does he have cards off the top of his library, he's got Planeswalkers to activate. Gerry is just, at this point, winning on all facets. He even has twice as much mana as Tom.
Just an embarrassment of riches. Tom is just going to chump, take 6 down to 6, draw a card for his turn. Even if he has an Always Watching here, this is not a very good prospect for him.
Yeah, the one reprieve would be a Declaration in Stone to deal with that Hangerback Walker. That would be one of the better draws that he has access to.
Well, he's going to draw a clue. Draw a card off of his clue.
And time to go to the next game.
Well, Tom is just going to go ahead and scoop it up. Gerry Thompson is going to take game 1 here over Tom Ross with his green-white tokens deck. He is halfway to a 17-0 record. Let's take a look at the player sideboards and see if we can figure out how they're going to change things around. For Gerry, he has 2 Declaration in Stone, 3 Planar Outbursts, 2 Nissa Vastwood Seer, 2 Linvala the Preserver, a Den Protector, an Enlightened Ascetic, 2 Stasis Snare, and 2 Secure the Waste. How do you think Gerry sideboards?
So I think that he's going to bring in the Planar Outburst, the Linvala, as the great ways for him to catch up if he falls behind, and Nissa Vastwood Seer to bridge the gap to those really expensive spells.
On Tom's side, we've got a Griff's Boon, 3 Handwear Militia Captain, 4 Needle Spires, 4 Reckless Bushwhacker, a Silk Wrap, and 2 Stasis Snare. How do you think Tom's going to sideboard?
I think he's going to be bringing in the Reckless Bushwhackers, and because they are a red card, he's going to be bringing in the Needle Spires along with them. And basically, I think that's his plan to play around sweepers.
Well, he's also going to be able to activate those Needle Spires as ways to attack after a sweeper happens. And even if you have a Griff's Boon on it, that's 6 damage. And you can just do it again next turn if you have 1,000,000,000 mana.
Yep, Needle Spires and Always Watching is actually a great combo.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. Now, for those of you who are watching this at home, I know you're sitting there, you see Gerry Thompson, you see Tom Ross, and you think to yourself, man, do they look good in those Star City t-shirts. How can I get one of those t-shirts?
Those are some handsome nerds.
Well, my friend, I tell you, right here you can get the official t-shirt of StarCityGames.com. 50% cotton, 50% polyester, 100% awesome. Screen printed here in the US of A. Go.StarCityGames.com/apparel, and you too can look as good as Tom Ross and Gerry Thompson with these StarCityGames.com t-shirts.
Yeah, for sure. These are great. I want some.
Unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that you will go 15-0 in an open event, but the first step to doing that might just be picking up one of those shirts.
I thought that's how it worked. I mean, both of them have the shirts on.
That is true.
Isn't that where you get the powers?
That is, well, that's one of the ways you can get the powers. There's all this, talk about like practice and hard work and playing a bunch of games and learning your deck, but
Ooh, that sounds hard.
I mean, you got to look good to play good.
It is. Todd Stevens will tell you that.
He will tell you that. And one of the players who tends to look good all the time is Tom Ross. Let's learn a little bit more about Tom. He is 32, lives in Roanoke, Virginia. He has 11 open top 8s with 2 wins, 3 invitational top 8s with 2 wins. He is a big Mortal Kombat X enthusiast specializing in Molina. He's a 5-time Louisiana State champion in Magic, and he used to parkour and can still do backflips. I think that if Tom wins this event, he should do a backflip for us.
That would be sweet. That would be sweet. Maybe we can ask him.
Yeah.
I think Jerry's going to squish him, though.
Maybe. Maybe if Gerry wins the tournament, Tom can just backflip for him for going 18-0 since they're good friends.
Yeah, they are good friends. That's one of the nice things about these Magic tournaments is a lot of the great players, they joke around about having rivalries and stuff like that, but a lot of them are, just good people and good friends.
Speaking of good friends, Gerry Thompson and Tom Ross, we get to sit here and watch them battle. Those of you at home get to sit there and watch them battle on the Premium Versus series every week. Who also battled against them both in this tournament is our boss, Cedric Phillips.
Yeah, Cedric
in fact,
did great.
Cedric lost to both Gerry and Tom Ross in both of his win-and-ins for this tournament.
Oh, wow, that's great. So nice of you to bring it up.
Well, just an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, just an interesting tidbit.
A little factoid for those of you out there who enjoy these sorts of things. But here we have Gerry Thompson is up a game against Tom.
In case anyone forgot, here's an interesting tidbit.
For those of you just joining us, we're in the top 4 match semifinals of the Atlanta Open. Gerry Thompson, currently 16-0. He went 15-0 in the Swiss, won his top 8 match. Here in his top 4, up a game against Tom Ross, who's on White Red Humans. Gerry is 4th on our Player of the Year leaderboard going into this tournament. I imagine he might move up since he did better than the other players. He was first going into this tournament as far as first seed going into the top 8. Tom is 11th on our Player of the Year leaderboard, hoping to pick up some points to make a run at the qualification for this season, and this is a very good start for that.
Yeah, and these races are tight. We saw a lot of the players who top 8'd and a lot of the players who are in top 32 all were people who with numbers by their names because they were in that race. So we're going to be seeing things shake up quite a bit. We're going to see these players jockeying for position. It's one of the great things about watching them play too, is there's not only a lot on the line for this specific tournament, but there's implications for those races.
I have actually heard that if Gerry makes the finals of this tournament, he leapfrogs Jeff Hoagland, Joe Lissette, and Andrew Tenjum in front of him and takes that first place spot for the Player of the Year race.
That is a big leap. You need to be tall with long legs like Gerry to make a leap like that.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. He still has to beat Tom Ross to do that, and that's not an easy thing. Many men have failed while trying that feat. We're going to go into game 2 here.
You could say the same thing about facing Gerry Thompson.
That is true. Actually, every man, every person has failed today coming into this tournament. That is for sure. Tom has a Dragon Hunter on his first turn. Gerry just has a copy of, he has a Canopy Vista. Turn 2, Tom is going to play a Thales Lieutenant, pump his Dragon Hunter, get in for 3 damage, and we are off to the races. This game is quickly going to become Gerry just has to survive to Planar Outburst.
Yeah, and in the first game, he was on the play, and he had the turn 2 Sylvan Advocate. Hangerback Walker's not quite as good. Wow, and that's Henwire Militia Captain?
That is Hanware Militia Captain. So a Militia Captain and a Expedition Envoy are going to come down, pumping that Thales Lieutenant. Tom is going to crash in for 6 points of damage. We've got a 2/2 for 2 at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 4 more creatures, transform Hanware Militia Captain. And then on the backside, it has power toughness equal to the number of creatures you control, and you get a 1/1 on your upkeep.
So one thing that is nice about the Handwire Militia Captain is it plays against sweepers in kind of a nice way. Tom can stop committing threats to the board at this point, or at least only commit at least 4 to get that thing to flip. And then once it's flipped, he can just kind of sit back and do what he wants.
Well, Gerry here is going to use a Declaration in Stone on that Thalia's Lieutenant and pass the turn. I did spy with my little eye a copy of Planar Outburst in Gerry's hand, so he's going to use this Hangerback Walker to great effect just to get to where he can utilize that Planar Outburst. Tom just needs to do as much damage as possible. We got a good start. Gerry's down to 11.
Yeah, and this Handwire Militia Captain, I mean, it's It's quite interesting. I think that we're going to see him essentially commit exactly 4 threats to the board, not more, and just try to get that Hanwar Militia Captain to flip without committing anything extra to the board.
Oh.
And it's a great way to capitalize on the fact that Gerry just doesn't have very many removal spells.
Well, the Silk Wrap is going to take care of the Hangerback Walker. Gerry's going to die 1 turn before he can actually play that Planar Outburst. This game is going to be a lot different as we go to Gerry being on the play.
Yeah, exactly. You just said 1 turn before he could play that Planar Outburst. If Gerry was on the play, he might have just cast a Planar Outburst and been fine. I don't think anyone's going to do anything different on the play or the draw, but I could certainly see something where Tom has the Hanwar Militia Captains when he's on the play and the Reckless Bushwhackers when he's on the draw, because of how they each interact with sweepers slightly differently. I don't think Tom wants to mess too much with like his main deck and get too fancy, but he is the boss, and for anyone at home, I'd be sitting there writing down exactly what you see in each game to get a slightly better clue as to how he's sideboarding.
Yeah, I can see that. I like having the Bushwhackers instead of the Militia Captains when you're on the draw. Just having extra insurance and ways to rebuild once a sweeper does happen. It is a pretty fancy strategy, and I know a lot of you out there are some fancy individuals. And if you're fancy like me and you enjoy playing with foils, you can check out our weekly sale at StarCityGames.com and get up to 50% off select foil rares and foil mythics to make your decks extra fancy. You got commander decks, you have awesome cubes, you're looking for a bunch of foil one-ofs, or if you'd like to just get all 4 copies of Hangerback Walker foil in your deck, up to 50% off select rares, select foil rares and foil mythics, StarCityGames.com weekly sale. This ends Monday night at 10:59 a.m. You don't have very much time, Andrew. You gonna go get some cards?
I'm hoping the dealers haven't closed quite yet. Can I get them there?
Maybe you're gonna go get one of your Tiger playmats?
Yeah, I'm gonna get one of those, that's for sure.
So it looks like our players are going to make a couple more changes to their deck. While they're doing that, let's learn a little bit more about Gerry Thompson. We've already seen this a couple times, but to be honest, I can never get enough. Gerry Thompson, he's 32. He's from Elk River, Minnesota. 20 open top 8, scratch that. 21 after this weekend. 5 open wins.
Scratch that.
Maybe
6 open wins.
Who knows? He has 7 invitational top 8s, 2 invitational wins. Jason Ford, a friend, holds the rights to name his firstborn child. At one time, he had $20,000 underneath his bed in a shoebox. It might not be safe to give him $5K for winning this tournament.
Don't do this at home, kids.
He's currently practicing partner acrobatics. Hopefully he doesn't take the $5K that he could win from this tournament and stick it in a box under his bed.
Yeah, I would suggest a bank. Banks are good for that. Not sure
beds
if Jerry's
are not
heard
banks?
of them, but beds are not banks.
Should we just do an Andrew Boswell hashtag? Hashtag beds are not banks?
Yeah.
Financial advice for those of you at home. I tend to not give it very often because I'm not financially savvy myself, but I will not keep a shoebox full of cash under my bed.
Yeah, I'm not financially savvy either, but I'm quite sure that a bed is not a bank.
So we're going into Game 3 here. Gerry Thompson will be on the play. It's going to be a huge boon for him. He should be able to enact his game plan of stay alive, planar outburst, sweep the board.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty big deal that he's on the play. This is such a tempo-orientated matchup. Like we saw in last game, if Gerry had been on the play, he might have had time to play that planar outburst.
I wonder if Gerry has brought in the Enlightened Ascetic for this matchup. It does give him the potential of an early blocker, but it also just gives him another way to kill either a Griff's Boon if he's kind of drawing dead to it, or an Always Watching that sneaks into the battlefield.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The one thing that's a little annoying about it is the body is fairly irrelevant. But if you kill their Always Watching, then all of a sudden those Savannah lines become something that I can trade with. So that is a good point. I'd be curious to see if he brings it in also. I didn't really view it as something that he would bring in, but now that I think about it, if he doesn't bring it in here, I wonder what it's specifically for.
Sphinx's tutelage.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Jace's Sanctum. We saw that earlier.
We did see that.
You got to have answers to it.
Gerry beat that guy. I wonder if that was part of the plan.
I really hope he did. It looks like Tom is making sure that his sideboard is proper here.
And these two players have played against each other over and over and over again. So one of the unique things about this particular sideboard is they may basically be sideboarding in a way where they're essentially playing mind games with each other. I mean, they've probably talked about how to sideboard in this matchup, and then if you talk about what to do, but then you do something different, you can really catch your friend by surprise.
You absolutely can. And I've had that come up a few times where I've worked on decks with Brad or BBD, and then like we have mirror sideboard plans worked out ahead of time, and then they both just change it up when I play
Really?
against them because they're jerks.
Because they're jerks.
Well, looks like Gerry's going to take a mulligan. Tom's also going to take a mulligan. So all these players are shuffling up to see if their 6-card hands are good enough. I keep alluding to this $5,000 payout. Let's take a look at the prize
big deal
payout here. Not only do you get that 5K, but you also get 30 SCG points, which is a whole lot.
Yep.
And an invite to an invitational where you can play for all that fame and prestige. Max McVady won the last one. You get your face on the token, $10,000, invite to the Players Championship, invite to the Pro Tour. It's just too much to pass up.
Yeah, it's really great. The opens are just great value.
Second place gets $2,000 and 25 points. Top 4 gets $1,000 and 20 points. Top 8, 515, and so on and so forth there on the screen. But these players are currently playing for at least $1,000 and 20 points.
Do you think of how much Chipotle you could buy with that?
Too much.
That's like a lifetime supply of burritos.
For your young burrito burromancer.
Yeah.
And it looks like both players are deciding if they want to keep their hand or not. Oh, Gerry is going to mulligan. He's going to go to 5.
It's a tough situation because Gerry has the tools to win the long game, but he doesn't have a lot of redundancy early on his curve. So if Gerry's in a situation where he feels like he needs to mulligan to a hand that has some early action, he may find himself mulliganing quite a bit.
And like you said before, this green-white deck does not mulligan very well.
Yeah. This is always an interesting point of contention. You have some players like Gerard Fabiano, which is known for never mulliganing. And then you have other players who mulligan a lot more aggressively. And one of the things that I always think about is maybe in a weird sort of way, it almost like doesn't even matter because your win ratio goes down so much when you have to mulligan repeatedly, even if you get to initially see the cards you want to see. And if you keep maybe sketchy hand, you're either going to see what you need to see on the top of your library or not. And sometimes I almost wonder, like, how much of a difference does it really make?
I think I could believe that as a case up until the new mulligan rule.
Yeah, the scry makes a big difference.
But getting a scry changes a lot. Like 6 with a scry is generally going to be better than a real bad 7.
Yeah, ever since that happened, I always feel like the first mulligan is almost free, but then mulliganing down to 5 is like awful.
Well, Gerry's going to start off here with the Westval Abbey. And no second land. Tom has a Plains along with a Thraben Inspector. And Gerry just has to be thinking, not like this.
Yeah, this is not the way Gerry wanted it to go. If Gerry can hit some land drops, he can get right back in it with a planar outburst. That is the most important thing for him to do. He's not going to be able to match Tom with the bottom of his curve. He needs the top of his curve.
Oh, Anointer of Champions and Needle Spires on turn 2 for Tom, followed by a turn 3 Thalia's Lieutenant's going to pump up his team, getting a bunch of damage on Gerry. Oh, Tom has a 1-drop and a Reckless Bushwhacker that he's showing to Gerry. He just needs to draw a land to be able to employ it.
And if you're going to take down the champion, you got to have some amount of luck on your side. And Tom is looking like he's going to be putting Gerry on a real fast clock. Gerry's going to have maybe one more turn to draw something. He may not even draw land here, and even if he does, all he's going to do is put one creature. Gerry has to extend the hand. Tom Ross takes down Gerry after Gerry has slaughtered the competition. 2 days of just murdering everyone like a killer. But now Gerry finds himself, finally, he got bad luck at the wrong time. And Tom Ross, who's a great player, phenomenal champion of many tournaments, takes him down.